Florida Literacy Coalition. And it's my pleasure to welcome you today's session, Bridging the Gap, Building Vocabulary and Reading Pathways in the Brain. This session is being presented by Talia Cotton, and we're very pleased to have Talia with us today. Talia is an instructor at Tallahassee Community College and also is a teaching and learning coach at during public schools. She has presented to us, she may be a familiar face to you, she's presented to us on several webinars over the years, and more recently at our conference. She was one of our presenters, did a couple sessions at the Florida Literacy Conference that were very well received. So we hope this is going to be a topic of interest to you, and really appreciate you, Talia, joining us today. I also want to do a shout out to the Florida Department of Education for their support in making this webinar possible. So please include your questions in the chat. Stephanie Rogers, my colleague here, our education training coordinator, and I will be kind of monitoring that, and Talia will be stopping at various points during the session to field questions. And then there'll be an opportunity for questions at the end as well. So with that, welcome, Talia.
Thank you so much. I'm going to go ahead and put up my slideshow for you. A couple things I recommend is that you log onto your Google account so that you can actually see the participant slideshow that was provided for you using that bit.ly. And I also recommend that if you have not done so, or if you've never used it before, get into ChatGPT. We're going to utilize that wonderful technology today. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. This is Bridging the Gap, Building Vocabulary and Reading Pathways in the Brain. My name is Talia Cotton. I have about 16 years of educational experience. I have a master's, a bachelor's, associate arts, all in secondary education and English. I am a current doctoral student at FSU in their instructional systems and learning technologies program. So excited. My dissertation focus is reading support in instructional design. So I'm excited about that in my second year. I presented, as Greg said, at Florida Literacy Coalition webinars and conferences, the National Council of Teachers of English. I'm very pleased that in July, I will be presenting for instructor, which is the folks that actually deal or create Canvas. So that's like a big presentation. And so I always put this up there to let you know that you're in front of someone who is learned, someone who knows her stuff. But also, as you can hear, I'm a girl of the South. So I want to make sure you enjoy my wonderful Southern drawl as we go ahead and have a good time together learning about the brain and vocabulary and reading instruction. So won't read all this to you, but we will look at a couple of things as we go along today. Those understanding that to read and understand and comprehend, it takes multiple sections of the brain. And we as instructors, educators must support our students to be able to access those sections of the brain in order to comprehend and read very well. I want to make sure that you are provided with the strategies that will help you make independent vocabulary learners and readers of your students. This is an ambitions training. Yes, we have an hour and 15 minutes. And so I'm going to give you a lot. I learned a long time ago, I always put more than you need. So I have a lot of information to give you. However, even if I don't get to all of that, all the resources you need are provided in that participant's handout for you. So we're going to do something right now called a chat race. And what's going to happen is I'm going to read some things to you. You're going to take about 15 to 30 seconds of think time. You're going to type in your answer to the question in the chat, but you will not hit enter until I alert you to do so. So that's why it's called the chat race, because I literally want to be flooded with all of your answers at that time. And so here's something I want you to look at as we are dealing with the material today. Here's a definition: intentional instructional practices. The definition: deliberate, purposeful learning techniques centered around developing a learner's comprehension of the course material. In other words, that's a lot of language, but in other words, I meant to do that. And so what I want you to do is take about 15 seconds. And in those 15 seconds, I want you to think about this focus question. What intentional instructional practices do you use in the class to support vocabulary and reading? Meaning you intended to do that. You meant to do that, these things that you're doing. So take about 15 seconds and think about that question. What intentional instructional practices do you use in your classroom to support vocabulary and reading? Okay, and so now what I want you to do is type, but don't hit enter. Tell me what you do, the intentional instructional practices that you use in your classroom to support vocabulary. Take about another 15 seconds to type, but don't hit submit just yet. Type, but don't hit enter. And so in 5 seconds, I'm going to have you hit enter in 4, 3, 2, 1. What are your intentional instructional practices? And that's why it's called the chat race. I see working with my low-level ESOL students, they use pictures, they use word combinations, great strategy. They break down the words into parts, great strategy. Word walls, great strategies. Vocabulary words of the week, love that. Preview vocabulary before reading, flashcards, virtual thinking strategies. All of those are excellent strategies. Some of those I will definitely be talking about today. And so I am in front of knowledgeable people on how to support vocabulary and reading. My goal for this session is to provide you with some unique things to reinforce what you're doing and to show how what you're doing is supporting the brain and helping them become very independent readers. Okay, so let's get started. Once again, if you have not done so, you can grab that bit.ly and that will give you all of the information, specifically the resource pantry at the end. I chalked that 3 slides full of information for you. So let's talk about research and why. I love to ground what I'm doing in research. It's helpful and it provides you with something instead of just my opinion. It's about, hey, other people that are way smarter than you or I said that this is great things to do. Okay. And so someone said, I love the graphic. It came from Chat GPT. Thank you. I love Chat GPT. I'm studying them for grad school as we speak. So let's talk about reading and the brain, okay? And so to do effective reading, it requires the use of multiple parts of the brain. You can see that in the graphic that I have for you. And so something that I have folks do, and this is gonna seem foolish, but it is a absolute great practice to do. I want you to take your hand, one hand, and put it in front of your face, right? And right where the palm of your hand is, right here at the base, I want you to put that right between your eyebrows. So I want you to, we're going to look silly, but that's okay. I want you to do that, and I want you to spread your hand all the way across your head, right? And keep it there. I have on makeup, so I can't, touch my face. Then I want you to take the other hand, same thing, and right where that little crook is in the back of our neck, that little C part, I want you to put that there. And I want you to kind of have this weird thing going on, right? Now, what I want you to do is without moving your hands, make your fingers touch. Somebody give me a reaction if you can do that. You can make your fingers touch in that position. Bam, bam. Who can do that? I don't see anybody. So this is the reason that I have you do that, because I got that from a friend, Heidi Perez. I always give credit where credit is due. If you look at the brain, the frontal lobe is where we have speech, right? Input and output of sound. So the reason that you can actually understand and hear what I'm saying is because of your frontal lobe, right? In the back is word analysis, sound and symbol connection. And so this is where I recognize words. So the fact that you understand that READING means reading comes from back here. Now, these pathways have to touch in order for comprehension to go on. And so just like we can't touch what, we can't link these things together naturally with our fingers, they're not linked together naturally when we come out of the womb, right? There has to be some type of instruction going on for that to happen. That's where we come in. We have to have some deliberate, intentional instructional practices going on in our classrooms, K-12 and adult and college, to help our students be able to connect those pathways. When those pathways are not connected, students struggle. They struggle with reading, whether they are younger students or adult learners, they struggle. If they have strong pathways, they don't struggle, right? Without those connections, reading is hard. They pause too frequently and for too long. They experience disrupted comprehension. Excuse me. They use more cognitive effort and they lack reader stamina because it's just a lot of weightlifting. Imagine trying to lift 100 pounds when you're only capable of lifting maybe 30. That's tough for our learners. And so the goal is, how do we strengthen those neural pathways? That happens with intense instruction in the core reading skills. So our pillars of literacy, and I know for some of us who teach adult ed, specifically some of us who teach secondary education, we think that these are the things that are for the elementary school folks. It is not. These things have to be reinforced throughout students' matriculation, even in college. Even in college, we still have to do these things, right? So phonemic awareness needs to be supported, phonics, fluency, vocabulary, and text comprehension. All of these things help strengthen those pathways, right? And so we have to go from sound, letter recognition, all the way to comprehension. And that's how we do it, by sticking with the pillars of literacy, supporting the pillars of literacy in everything we do. And so what you have here is a picture of a brain. And I always, every time I do this, I think this is your brain and this is your brain on drugs. I know some of you are old enough to remember that, right? And so this is your brain on reading. This is what a brain looks like and how it's activated when those pathways are strengthened. And so look how everything is lit up from the frontal lobe all the way back. Comprehension, word recognition, all of those things are lit up. So when you actually can read well, these parts of the brain light up. Now imagine what's going on in the brain of a child that does not have that word recognition, right? They can't pronounce the word and they're stuck on act to act, right? That stuttering is their brain trying to get it and kind of trying to start up like a lawnmower, an old lawnmower at that. It's not working. And so in order to support our students, we have to have effective vocabulary and reading instruction. And that instruction must activate and connect those pathways to the brain. And so that's what I'll be showing you today, how to do that. What activities, what strategies can do that for your students. And so why are we doing this? This is the thing. Effective reading and instruction improves reading ability, and it changes the brain's functioning so that it can perform the reading task more effectively. So, ladies and gentlemen, we are brain surgeons, right? We are changing brains through effective instruction. And that's why it's so important, because we help our students change the functionality of the brain. But without our support, their brains stay the same. They don't light up correctly, and we send them out there into the real world without the support that they need to be independent vocabulary learners and independent readers. And so what do we do with our effective vocabulary reading instruction? We hit all the 5 literacy pillars. So phonemic awareness and phonics, that's pronunciation. We're going to talk about that. Fluency, actually using pronunciation and expression when you are teaching and having them practice that. Vocabulary activities and instruction, and then that all that leads to comprehension. We're going to look at it in 3 parts: before reading or instruction, during reading or instruction, and after reading and instruction. And that's how we're going to organize that today. And so if you do that with every pillar, it's going to touch on certain parts of the brain. So when we're dealing with pronunciation, it's going to touch on certain parts of the brain. Fluency, certain parts. Vocabulary and comprehension, certain parts. And then when you do before, during, and after reading instruction, it's going to hit on certain pillars. So everything we do all comes back and centers on those brain pathways. How do we build stronger pathways and make our kids keep cycling through those pathways to build up stronger networks in the brain? We do that through our instruction, right? So before we move on, are there any questions about basically the research that you saw? Any thoughts on it? What do you think thus far about the material you just saw, especially this whole crazy hand thing I had you do? What do we think? I want to give you time to have a moment to express yourself before I move on. Okay. And so let's look at the strategies, because that's what you came here for. You came here for some great strategies, and I want to make sure you have that before you leave. We're going to be looking at some strategies for effective vocabulary and reading instruction. Somebody said already super useful. Thank you. Oh, thank you, Lee. I appreciate that. And so a couple things. Let me go back. If you see this strategy cap, that's going to tell you, hey, this is a strategy I want to look at. What is she doing here? And so I'm either modeling or I'm showing you things that you can do as a teacher. And so we're going to be looking at vocabulary pullout, how to do that, focus vocabulary, pronunciation support, visual representation of vocabulary words, prosodic reading, a great strategy, by the way, multiple exposures, graphic organizers, and projects. And so, like I said, this is a robust training. Excuse the bell. This is a robust training, and so I want to make sure that you get all that I have in store for you. So vocabulary pullouts, we'll start here. Vocabulary pullouts supports building pathways that support pronunciation. It increases fluency. It aids in the comprehension of the text or the content, because even though I'm talking about vocabulary and I'm talking about reading instruction, all of that centers around whatever content you're dealing with. And so if you're social studies, you're teaching social studies or history or science or whatever you're teaching, these things still work. This is just not for an English class. This is for any place that words happen, any place that reading happens. And even in math, words and reading still happen. And so these structures and these strategies can be used in any content area. And so when we're dealing with vocabulary pullout, it just takes some quick prior planning. It takes prior planning, but it's very quick. And I'm going to show you that today. And you emphasize, once you pull out the words, you emphasize those words throughout the reading process so that they're continue bombarded with having to deal with those words to strengthen those pathways. Research says that when you are emphasizing certain words, you should use 5 to 10. As I'll show you, and I'll be very transparent, I didn't do that for a long time. I'm better at it now. Sometimes I still don't do 5 to 10. I do a little bit more, but I'm better at it now. I went from 30 to less than 30. And so the words that I really like to focus on, especially when I am having my students read something or I'm having my students work on a concept, I like to pick out words and pull out words that aid in comprehension. So what words can I ask myself, Talia, what words do I think will stump or hinder comprehension for my students? Now, I have to know my students in order to do this, right? I have to know who I'm working with, know their reading ability. And so that does mean that I have to have a culture in my classroom that I know my students. Once I know my students, now I can pick out, oh, grit is going to give them trouble because they're thinking grit as in breakfast, as Quaker oats, not grit as in tenacity and passion, right? And so that is a word I have to highlight because they're going to be thinking one grit, and I'm talking about a whole nother type of grit, right? And so those are the things that I would pull out when I'm dealing with what words are going to aid my student in comprehending this text, right? And one of the things that I also do when I pull out the words, if you can look at the graphic that I provided for you, is that I like to leave it in the actual context of the article or passage or textbook. And I like to highlight it in context so that they see where it's placed. They see the words around it. So that's going to be me using some context clues and helping them with context clues. I like to leave it in there. I'll pull it out, for the assignment, but I like to leave it in the article so they know where to find it. And so as you can see, if you look at the top, I got better, right? When I first started out with this growth mindset activity, I had 35 words. That's a lot. I'm going to tell you that's a lot. That's a lot, right? And even for my general students, they had to do something with 25 words. My honors had to do something with 30, and anything after that was extra credit. Finally, as you can see, I moved down to 8, where I had 8 words that were specific to what I wanted them to do. And I had to kind of train myself like, okay, Talia, what are the words that are important? Everything can't matter. I have to focus on the words that are really going to help my students. And so I got better. I also like to link the word with the text. So I created this graphic organizer where you put in the word, you find the text evidence that supports the word. So I'm making them link the word, the definition to the text. So I always want to go back to the text. I never want to teach in isolation or have them deal with words in isolation. I always make them go back to the text. And so what we're going to do is something called talk and text, or text and talk, excuse me. And we're looking at the preamble to the Constitution. And what you'll notice throughout the whole presentation that I'm using more than just English. I'm trying to touch on a lot of content areas because I want to show you that these things can happen in any classroom. So this is going to be a whole group question. What words should we pull out to support building pathways in our students' brains? In other words, what words will our students struggle with? So I modeled something for you. The 2 words that I would pull out, preamble, right? And I would pull out Constitution. So what I want you to do is look at the preamble to the Constitution and decide what words would you pull out and throw that in the chat for me. And I'm going to take a couple people to kind of tell me why. But let's take about 1 minute. Let's take about 30 seconds. Find the words that you will pull out. Find the words that you think would be important and type it in the chat for me. And the time is yours. Domestic welfare, love that. Ordain. And that's a great word because depending on the backgrounds of your student, ordain might be a more ecclesiastical term, right? They've seen ordain in church. They might not know what ordain mean here. Is it the same? Is it different? Tranquility, right? Common defense. What does that mean? Those are 2 words linked together. What does it mean to have a common defense, right? Justice, established. I like that. And so, does anybody want to unmute? Raise your hand for me. Anybody wants to unmute and tell me why you chose, tell me the words you chose, and why did you choose that for? Think about the students you teach. Why did you choose that? Raise your hand and definitely want everybody to share. I see a couple people I've had in here before. I see Miss Faye. I've seen her before. How you doing? Anybody want to share out? And you're also, if you're shy, you're also welcome to put it in the chat. Why did you choose those words? I definitely, yes, ma'am, Christina. Can anybody hear Christina? Because I can't hear her. And if it's messing up with you, you're welcome to throw it in the chat, Christina. Okay, Susan says no. Anybody else? I want to give some time for discussion. Yes, ma'am, Ms. Faye.
Well, my Spanish speakers, I wouldn't worry about tranquility because that's very close to one of their words. And they're always telling me to relax. But there are so many words for my low-level students that establish, we would usually say make. So I would do a lot with synonyms, simpler synonyms. Secure, get, would go with get, and then lead that into secure. Posterity, children and children's children. I would do a lot of work on almost every word in this with synonyms.
Yes. And not only that, especially like you said, if you're dealing with students who have a low word recognition and reading ability, you might want to take it one comma at a time, because a comma is a breath period, right? And so we, the people of the United States, pause, and you just talk about what words you see in that in order to form a more perfect union. Pause, and this talk about what we see in that. Establish justice. Pause. Like, that's a great strategy to use if this is too robust, because this is a very lofty piece of text, even though it's just a paragraph, and actually it is just a sentence, right? Very long sentence. It's still full of a lot of words, right? Someone said tranquility because it means different things to different people. I agree. I agree. And so that's something, but notice how quick we were able to do that. All you needed was your text. And once you have your text, you just pull it out, right? And now you just have to think about, what am I going to do with those words so that I'm re-engaging my students on a regular basis? And so we're going to move on to focused vocabulary instruction support. This support includes intentional instructional practices that assist with correct pronunciation and increased accuracy, and it develops new vocabulary, something that we as humans intuitively have going on. When we talk about the evolution of human communication, it starts with the auditory. And so those of you who have children, I want you to think about that newborn baby, right? You brought it home, and all of a sudden it had this cry that lets you know that they're in pain, right? I know some of you have experienced that. If you're parents, like, you heard this cry and you knew your baby was in pain, you knew something was wrong. Then they had a cry that was not really a cry. It was like, oh, they just want some attention, right? Then they have this cry that they're hungry and they want food now, right? And then they have this cry, they're just cranky, like something's going on. They're cranky. They don't like what's going on. They are not telling you, mother, I am in pain. Father, I am cranky. Please pick me up. Like, babies don't come out with full sentences, but the auditory sound still alerts you to what they're trying to portray. That's the evolution of human communication. And so our brains are wired that way. Think about where the sound processing happens. It happens right up front, right? And so we immediately, the first thing we are geared toward as humans is the sound. When students cannot access the sound of a word, they have a harder time comprehending the text. It takes them so long to process the word sounds that they're not processing the meaning. They haven't even gotten back here and they to the word recognition, and they definitely haven't gotten to the side where it talks about text comprehension. And so providing them with pronunciation support is going to support your students. How do you do that? First of all, the words that we just picked out, preamble, constitution, I would have my students repeat those words 3 times at least. Your brain is sticky, right? Zaretta Hampson talking about making things sticky. And so your brain is sticky. When they hear things and hear or do things in repetitive ways, it kind of gloms onto your brain. And so having your students actually repeat words 3 times or more is going to make that pronunciation stick, and it's going to aid in comprehension. This is something that I have to be intentional about. Slow, clear speech. Like I told you, I'm a child of the South, and I tend to just my speech is very quick and fast, and it sometimes those vowels don't vowel like they need to. And so when I am being intentional with pronunciation, I make sure that my speech is slow and clear. I exaggerate my mouth movements because they need to see the lip, the tongue action. They need to even see the throat movement. I separate the syllables. I separate the word sounds. I separate the phonemes, right? Those things matter when I'm trying to make sure I'm supporting pronunciation in class. And then I do activities that aid in pronunciation practice, right? Letting them hear and practice words. One of my best technology supports is the Google pronunciation practice. Anytime I'm dealing with vocabulary, I always bring this resource to the forefront because a lot of people don't know that Google does this with certain words, right? And so I can type in a word, let's just say preamble, right? And I can type in preamble, and right by it in the Google search bar, I can put pronunciation. If Google has access to it, they will bring up this box. So this is Constitution. They will bring up this box, and now my students can practice saying this word, and I don't have to practice it with them or for them. They can do it on their own. And what I love, it's going to show you, it's going to break it into syllables. It's going to show you the mouth and tongue movement over here with the mouth. And then when you get down here and practice it, it's going to tell you if you're right or wrong, and then tell you what you need to say in order to get the pronunciation right. You can slow it down. It's going to give you feedback. Look at this great resource. Sometimes what I found out is as a teacher, I don't have to do everything. I just have to know where to get everything, right? To help me be a better instructor. And so that's a great resource to use. Another thing you can use is the getpronounce.com. They have a Google Chrome extension where they will read certain words in Google for you. And then the read aloud dictation and read aloud and dictation in Word. I don't even read my students' papers anymore. I let Word read it to me. Sometimes now that I'm in the doctoral program, I have to do all these papers. I dictate my papers to Word, and then I go back and correct. And so that cuts down on a lot of time for me. Work smarter, not harder. These are tools that your students can use, especially your EL students. Imagine them actually dictating words to the computer in English and being able to see if they actually pronounced them well enough that the computer understood them. Another thing, YouTube pronunciation videos, they have those for almost any word you can think of. And so you don't have to be the person that pronounced all these words, right? Just a little time, energy, and intentionality will help your students with pronunciation. You don't have to do everything, right? You can find other structures and strategies to do that. So be mindful of that, right? I also put in here a video to help you with how to use Google pronunciation. So it's like a 6-minute video, and I just walk you through how to do it. I knew I wasn't going to have time to do it today, but I wanted to do that. Someone said Google Translate will pronounce the base word and the translation. Awesome. And so what we're going to do is I'm going to put on my teacher hat, and I'm going to walk you through something that you could do with your students, okay? And so, hi, my name is Miss Cotton. I am your teacher today, and we're going to learn about this wonderful word. We're going to be reading a text from the National Library of Medicine. The title is The Fountain of Youth, and in the text, they're talking about this phrase right here. And so before we get started, what I'm going to do is we're going to pronounce this word together. I'm going to have Eva Longoria and Amber Heard. I know we don't do Amber no more, but this was the best video for this word, so we're going to pretend like she's not there, right? But they're going to pronounce the word, and I want you to listen to how they pronounce the word, because after we hear it for a while, I'm going to have everybody unmute and we're going to say the word together 3 times, right? We're going to say it 3 times together. So I need you to put on your listening ears and I need you to be ready to pronounce this term up here together. Here we go. Okay. Question. Did anybody hear that? Okay. So technology likes to technology sometimes. So what I'm going to do is stop and then share, and let's see. And then let's try it this way. Share. No. Copy link. One thing I have found out when I'm dealing with technology is sometimes it acts up, and that's okay. Let's see. Speakers. And if it doesn't work in about a couple seconds, I'm going to move on. Let's see. Okay, let's try that. Okay. Can you all hear that?
We cannot.
That's okay. That's okay. I won't belabor the point. Life happens sometimes.
Did you hit share sound when you hit share?
Yes, I did, but that's okay. Let me try that one more time. Stop share.
It worked in rehearsal.
It did, but one thing I've learned is technology has its own way of doing things. Hold to select multiple windows. No. It doesn't like me, but that's okay. We'll go from there. So what I'm going to have you do, I'm going to play it, but I'm going to put some sound with it and we'll go from there. So the pronunciation of the word is hyaluronic acid. Hyaluronic acid. Hyaluronic acid. And so what I want everybody to do, if you can, unmute. And I want you to say that with me. We're going to do that 3 times. So I'm going to give everybody a chance to unmute. And in a couple of seconds, I'm going to say the word and I want you to say it. So 1, 2, 3. Hyaluronic
acid.
acid. 1. Hyaluronic
acid.
3. Hyaluronic
acid.
Okay. And so now what I'm going to have you do, because we've pronounced the word, we know that is hyaluronic acid. There are going to be some visuals that you see with this video. Of course, there was going to be sound, but we don't have sound and we're not going to stress over that. There are going to be some visuals, some text that pop up. This video is going to kind of help you figure out what hyaluronic acid could be. So I want you to watch the video, look at some pictures, look at the words that they're putting on there in this commercial for this item that they're selling, and see if you can figure out what hyaluronic acid is. Okay, here we go. And it's about 30 seconds. So look at the visuals that they're giving you. Look at the words. Hydrates, replumps, reduces wrinkles. Powerful results. And she says, you're worth it. So think about what you just saw when it comes to this substance, hyaluronic acid. In the chat, I want you to tell me, what do you think this product, this natural substance, what does it do? What comes to your mind as you are thinking about what hyaluronic acid does? Give me your thoughts. What is hyaluronic acid? And you can throw it in the chat. You're welcome to just jump
It's a
in.
substance that goes under your skin and plumps it up so that the wrinkles smooth out, or they just don't clump.
Okay, I like it goes under your skin and it plumps. I love that. Somebody said it's absorbed by the skin. I love that. Think about what's absorbed. Somebody said it hydrates the skin, it absorbs the skin, it hides wrinkles, clears wrinkles, skin conditioner, fills wrinkles, right? And so I wanted you to think about all of that as we read. I'm going to have someone read for us. Miss Stephanie, would you feel comfortable reading? I want you to read this and make sure you pronounce the words that are highlighted and underlined very clearly for me.
Hyaluronic acid is a natural substance found in the fluids in the eyes and joints. The key molecule involved in skin moisture is hyaluronic acid, HA, that has unique capacity in retaining water. It acts as a cushion and lubricant in the joints and other tissues. Daily external injury, in addition to the normal process of aging, causes loss of moisture. Different forms of hyaluronic acid are used for cosmetic purposes.
So think about the video we just saw. Think about the text we just read. How do they relate? What words relate to each other from the visual to the text? Somebody, you're welcome to jump in. You're welcome to throw it in the chat. There are some things that connect. What are they?
Moisture.
Moisture, right? And moisture is linked to what in the video?
Pumping?
Pumping, yes,
Yes,
right?
good.
What else is it linked? Anything else that's linked? The text with the visuals that we just saw. Somebody said plumping. Is there a word in the text that means plumping? Or to plump, or something that's
Hydrating, yeah.
hydrating, yes. Anything else? Plumping.
Cushion.
Cushion, yes. When it comes to hydrate, are there any word, because they said hydrate in the text, I mean in the video, are there words in here that talk about hydrating? Retaining water, I love that. Any words in the text that talk about hydrating?
Moisture.
Moisture, yes. What else? There's some other words that talk about hydrating. I definitely, as hint, one of them is highlighted and or underlined. Hydrating.
Lubricant and retaining water.
Retaining water. And so I'm going to take off my teacher hat. Sadly, we didn't have the sound, but technology has its own way of doing things sometimes. But look how I paired the pronunciation. Look how I paired the visuals before we even tackled the text. And I front loaded information to my students to help them with this text, right? And so now just with a commercial, right? Eva Longoria and the other lady that we don't do anymore, right? And pronouncing the words, if you have heard the sound, and this will be in your resources, but they pronounce the words very slowly, hyaluronic acid. That's how they pronounce it. I didn't have to do a lot of work. All I had to do is find a video that's going to give me my pronunciation, that's going to give me the visuals that I need to help support my readers. I didn't have to do much but prepare. I had an intentional instructional practice, right? And these visuals match with the word fluids, molecules. We saw molecules actually in the video. They had that come up. Where is it? Bam, right? We saw that. lubricant, replumping, cushion, all of those things match. So this video matches the text and it helps aid in comprehension, right? Pronunciation, word recognition, comprehension, all of those things are done in this one activity. Just this one activity is linking all those things. So I want you to take some time. You're going to text and talk. How did this activity support students pronouncing the key terms and comprehending the text/topic? I'm going to give you a minute. You're welcome to throw that in the chat. And then any brave soul who wants to talk about how did the activity we just did support students in pronouncing the key terms and comprehending the text? Take about 1 minute to gather your thoughts for me. Put it in the chat. Let's take about 15 seconds, and in 10 seconds, we'll have someone who's willing to share out. Says the image, idea, words, use vocabulary, and comprehension. The words was repeated and used in context, preloading, then more information was gleaned about the words through the paragraph. Yes. Anyone else want to verbally share out? You got a thumbs up. Videos and visuals are always helpful. I like that I don't have to be looking for a visual with every new word. Using visuals, yes, and we'll be talking about that. And so notice I didn't have to do a lot of work, right? This was something that I built. This is the topic that I wanted to talk about, and I went and found the things that are going to help me teach my students and support them with pronunciation, comprehension, all the way through all those pillars. So that's very important. So let's look at, as we were talking about, visual representations, right? And so you saw a little bit of that with the video that we used with hyaluronic acid. You're going to see a little bit of that now and some other ways you can use visuals. So first of all, as we talked about, the evolution of human communication goes from auditory then to visual. The brain can process visuals faster than it can text. So we start with audio. Think of the griots in Africa. Think of the storytellers in our prehistoric days, right? Those folks would gather out. Think of the court jesters that would tell the stories and make people laugh, and the folks, the singers and the songwriters. All of those folks dealt with auditory, right? But then think about the visuals. So the pictographs that you see on cave walls, all of those are types of visuals. So the brain goes from the sound to the picture, and then it moves to the text. So why it's so hard for students to understand text is because they've not been provided with the support, the audio and the visual support they need to access the text, right? This is just the evolution of human communication. And so providing high interest visual representation helps with vocabulary retention. Pairing a picture with a vocabulary term aids in keeping that word in your long-term memory. It makes a visual connection, and it supports English language learners. And anything you do for an English language learner is going to support all students. And so let's talk about how we could use this. What are some ways that we could do this? Here's a word, right, from biology, heart, right? And so the heart is a fist-sized organ that pumps blood throughout your body. Once again, the heart is a fist-sized organ that pumps blood throughout your body. All right, I need everybody to do that. Hold up your fist. The heart is a fist-sized organ that pumps blood. Bring it to your heart throughout the body. And so that hand gesture, that's a visual. A 3-year-old can understand that, right? I could tell a 3-year-old what a heart is. It is a fist-sized organ that pumps blood. They know what blood is because they've probably seen it throughout your body. That's something that anybody can understand. I don't have to have the big, nice video, although it's nice, but just hand gestures is a visual. So think about that as you're planning to use visual representations with vocabulary words. You can go high tech or low tech. The fist size organ, you will remember that, right? That's a great thing in strategy to use. And so here's some tips, some good research. When you're pairing words and visual representation, keep it simple. You don't want to have too much going on, right? You want to have where, like I said, I had the fist size organ that pumps blood. That's real simple versus here's this big graphic full of the aorta and the ventricle. Sometimes that's a little much. Like just sometimes keep it simple. Whereas I know it's a fist, I know it pumps blood. Sometimes that can be good enough for our first introduction to the text, right? Or to the word. Keep it relevant. The word and the picture should relate immediately, right? And keep it close. You don't want to have it associated far away. You want the visual and the words to be right together, paired side by side, so that way they can kind of I scan it and know what's going on. So those are some great things by a researcher called Mayer that's very helpful. So here's some things you can do, right? And this can be teacher created or student created. You don't have to do everything, teacher. You don't have to do everything, instructor. You don't have to do everything, professor. You can have your students do these things and collect these things over the years. So your visual word walls, you can put a QR code with the visual so that they hear the sound, they see the visual, they see the word, they see the definition. Great resource. You can do vocabulary videos. Let your students do that. Hey, here's your word. Here's what it means. Go find a video that connects to this word. And then you collect those things. So next year, you don't have to go find it. You can give your next set of students or your next semester versus students a bunch of new words so you can keep collecting that, right? Gallery walk doodles, right? You can have them walk around the classroom and draw what they think this word may mean based on the definition. You can do a vocabulary photo album, right? That can be a digital photo album. And so these are great things that you could actually do. And so what I want you to do, hopefully everybody has a nice little smartphone, right? I want you to pull up your camera. And that QR code, when you click it on there, it'll come up with a nice little YouTube video link. And I want you to listen to the actual video that's connected to Bloom, because this could be a word wall that I have up on my in my classroom that links visuals, that links auditory, that links all of these things. Look at that, listen to it, and then answer this question. Would you use this strategy? Why or why not? Be ready to share your thoughts. So I want you to take about 1 minute and just play with it a little bit. Tell me what you think. And you're welcome to put the answer to that question in the chat. Somebody said, excellent, thank you. And hot note, I literally did a presentation where I had the people in the presentation make these. I gave them words and they made this. I think I gave them 20 minutes, right? And they made their own vocabulary video. I put that in the resources for you all. So you get to see that I put the direction on how to do that with your student. Imagine all those words that you have to have your students do. Imagine every semester giving your students one word, and this is your word, right? And you're going to make the word wall strip with the QR code, with the picture, with the definition, a quick student-friendly definition. And you have that up on the word wall for your kid, for your students. What's going to happen is that student is going to take ownership of that word, right? And so that's like so great, right? Absolutely makes good essay topic. I love it. Awesome. This is lovely. Thank you, Heather. So what do we think? I'm hearing a lot of positive things, so I'm loving that. What do we think? Anybody want to share out verbally or share out in the written word? What do you think? Would you use this? So let's do this. Would you use it? Give me a thumbs up. Give me a smiley face. Give me a, jazz hands. What do you think? Would you use it? Anybody? I see a lot. I see some hearts. I got stuck on the advertisement. Oh, sorry, Miss Faye. Somebody said yes. Absolutely. Okay, I'm loving this. So this is something you can do, and not only can you do this activity, you don't have to be the one to do it. You can have your students do it, right? They're learning and they're providing you with structures that you can use next year and the next semester, right? So this is one of I love that I stumbled across this in my research, right? So I'm glad you like it. So let's go on to the next. Prosodic reading. Prosodic reading is, so let me tell you what it is. Prosodic reading is reading with expression, right? This is what we would consider like a great storyteller, that storyteller voice who they read and they have the ups and the downs and the highs and the lows and the musicality of their voice, right? That's what prosodic reading is. Prosodic reading to students, all students, all students, all students. Reading to them lowers the reader's cognitive load because now they don't have to struggle with words they've never seen, words they don't know, words they don't know how to pronounce, right? It provides and mimics and practices the correct pronunciation. It models fluency. Thank you. It is of the new text, and it aids in comprehension of the text or content. So one research says that prosodic reading is one of the hallmarks of achievement of reading fluency and aiding comprehension. So I want you to think of the word hallmarks when we care to send the very best. Having prosodic reading, especially that first read, is the very best of instruction. And sometimes I think as specifically secondary ed, we think that reading to our students, that's what you do in elementary school. Like we don't do that anymore. But I want to challenge you with this thought. The audiobook industry is a billion and billions of dollar industry, right? And so that's only true if people, adult people with money, right, like to be read to, right? Excuse that. Like to be read to, with expression, like to be read to with the musicality of voice. So if billions and billions of people spend billions and billions of dollars wanting to be read to, that should tell us that this is something that all learners need and like, right? And so it provides that pronunciation support. You get to hear that oral reading sound. You get to see the appropriate phrasing. You get to have fluency support, so that pauses, the pause structures, the stresses on words, the rise and fall patterns, all of those things matter. And so by doing it, at least that first read is very key. And not just reading a portion, reading all of the pertinent text, story, whatever that is. Having them listen to it that first time and follow along with you is a great strategy. It is literally the very best of instruction, right? And so what could that look like? Here in DPS, that we call it a reading routine. Not to take what they have, you can call it a reading or instruction regimen, however you want to talk about. But that first reading of the text, the first time they engage with the text, they need to hear it. That paper in front of them, and then you read it, have a student that you prepped the day before or the week before read it. You can even have, it's not the best, but you can have the computer read it, or you can use YouTube videos and things. But that first interaction with the text, it needs to be read to them. That's going to help them so much and connect those pathways. Then do a whole group reading where folks are reading. You can do a partner and peer reading. You can do close reading. And then that last reading could be that individual reading, right? Who's the reader? It doesn't have to just be you. It can be the teacher. It can be audio. It can be video. It can be fluent student that's prepared in practice. All of those things can happen, but that first reading needs to be, they need to listen. That really helps. And so the videos I provided for you show a wonderful reader actually reading this poem, and that I love. Out of the night that covers me, black as the pit from pole to pole. He reads it so beautifully. I could let my students listen to that. That could be their first interaction with this poem, right? Also, this other video that I have that says The Gilded Age is from this text. I actually recorded this video or this audio, right? It took me about 2 tries because I wanted to make sure I was fluent and I sounded really well. You'll be able to hear it in the slideshow that I gave you. But I did this for my student because I wanted that first description for them to hear it, and I wanted them to hear certain words like the Gilded Age, industrialization, immigration. I wanted them to hear those words pronounced correctly. And so I read that to them. It took maybe 5 minutes to do. It took more time to make it pretty and add pictures to it than it did to actually do the audio. And so these are some things you can do. You can find the text from YouTube. You can do the text on your own. Imagine even having your students do it. So this video, this audio, I took the audio from a website and I made this video for a student. But they can listen to someone else, and I can say, "Hey, John, I can say, Faith, next week I'm gonna have you read about chromosomes because we're moving on to chromosomes. And so this paragraph, I want you to be ready to read. Here's the audio. I want you to take it. I want you to practice it. Come to the classroom, and I want you to come practice with me at least 2 times, right? I'm going to give you extra credit, all that good stuff, but I want you to be ready to speak this out in front of the class. A couple words I want you to make sure you're saying correctly: chromosome, molecule, nucleus, autosomes, inherit, microscope. I want you to make sure you're saying those words clearly. And I want you to mimic her, the lady that's actually doing the audio. I want you to make sure you mimic her. And so I can set it up. So Faye's now ready. When she comes back in, she's ready to actually read this. And it's like, oh, Faye's a great reader. And students tend to want to mimic their peers a little bit more than they want to mimic us as their teachers and instructors, right? We're almost done. And so one of the things that's going to be really key and really important is multiple exposures. Now, multiple exposures is a high impact strategy, excuse me. And so it's a high impact strategy. It is where we make sure that the students have multiple opportunities to encounter, engage, and elaborate on the content, area, vocabulary, and text. Our research says that basically deep learning is developed over time. You cannot give one lesson and think they're going to get it in one lesson. They have to be piecemeal, that lesson. Small chunks over time sticks, makes our brain a little bit more sticky, and it sticks better than giving them a bunch of instruction in one chunk, right? And so over time, using multiple spaced out interactions, activities, and assignments, right? And so whether you call it multiple exposures, whether you call it retrieval practices, which is the new hot term, right? Whether you call it space practice, it's all about strengthening their memory, letting them practice remembering the material and the information, and enriching their memory. If you do these things, it builds a stronger, more enduring learning experience, right? So what can that look like in the classroom? It is repeated modeling, instruction, and practice. Notice, I didn't just say a bunch of activities. It is repeated modeling, instruction, and practice. So I have to do something too, and the students have to do something. We all are engaging in the learning process, and it's over a course of several days or several weeks. One of the things I used to do when I taught is I provided them with 1 or 2 texts. Normally it was a paired text, informational and some type of literature that had the same type of topic. And we looked at that literature over 2 weeks. Right. And we did a bunch of activities where they had to continue to re-engage with the material. that's one of the things that I did, and it worked very well with my students, right? And so multiple exposures is the repetition of learning outcomes through different activities, scenarios, and contexts. It's not just giving them the same lesson, assignment, and activities over and over, right? And so it could be one text, one topic, and I'm doing something with vocabulary. I'm doing something with paraphrasing and summary. I'm doing something with text evidence. I'm doing something with writing, main idea, something to do with the standard. All of these things are really important, and I am engaging in different ways so that it makes them pull on this rope in their brain, pull on that rope, and pull on this rope, right? Very important. And so it's retrieving is about pulling the information out of their head. Spacing is about doing those opportunities over time. And so what you see in front of you is what I have my students do. They had to deal with this text. They had to do some vocabulary. I told you I got better with it. General had 10 words. Honors had 15. If you wanted to do anything over your assigned time, it was yours. Then they had some questions they had to answer. They had to do a graphic organizer, and they had to answer some other questions from Common Lit. They did this for 2 weeks, right? They did this for a week, right? And they had to turn it in, and it made them go back and read, right? And so one of the things that I provided for you is a Chat GPT activity where you could put this prompt in Chat GPT, and it's going to give you a variety of activities that you can do with a text. And so grab that. It's already in your material. Grab that, and I would suggest using that later on. Lastly, as we wrap up, graphic organizers. Using graphic organizers are high yield instructional strategies. They help students organize their thinking. It helps them visualize the relationship between words and their possible meaning. And it can be used before, during, and after your instruction. And so there are a variety of graphic organizers that I provided for you in the resources. My favorite is a great Frayer model. I love a Frayer model. My students said, hey, Ms. Cotton, when you die, they say they're going to talk about how I gave them Frayer models. So I thought that was hilarious. And then lastly, project, and they really did say that. But projects, this is where we let the students make the knowledge and vocabulary their own, and we let them use it in different and creative ways, right? It helps them synthesize that new information, because that's the purpose of knowledge. Knowledge is not just something we have them get and dispose of. It is to make the learning their own. One of my favorite pieces deals with the free form mapping. So that's going to use central idea, main idea, supporting details, vocabulary, and writing all together. And so it harnesses everything, all of those pathways. It's using all of those pathways to create this project. I provided that in the resources as well for you. And so I'm going to take the last about 2-3 minutes. Any comments, questions, thoughts about what you saw? That, like I said, it was an ambitious training. I gave you a lot of material, but I wanted to make sure that you had plenty to pick from. And before I let you talk, please know you don't have to do everything. Find 2 things that you would like to use right now and use it right now. Something that's easy, something that's doable, something that you can pair. So any questions, comments, thoughts? Yes, ma'am.
I have voluntary students, so they're not in a formal school setting. And I had a small group of 5 women. They were all Spanish speakers. They were all Cuban. And they had a fairly wide range of ability, but I lost one fairly early on because she really needed to be able to pronounce the word before her mind was willing to consider meaning or anything else. She did pick up meaning, but I could, and your presentation, confirmed that beautifully. It really was a big stumbling block. We're still in contact. She still texts me. I have Paquito Spanish, but we managed. But that importance of being able to say the word before we can be able to even understand what it means I endorse that.
And send her that Google pronunciation link and see if that supports her learning just as an independent learner. I think it's important
Right.
that we continue to learn. So send that to her and see what she says, and you'll have my contact information. Tell me what she thinks about that.
I will.
Anybody?
I also use Chat GPT when I'm doing vocabulary expansion with my higher level students. So I'll take a word like a verb and the tenses and then its adjective form or its noun form. Then I ask Chat GPT to write 5 sentences with each form of that word. Then I can pick the ones I want, and I can use close paragraph, close sentence exercises, and I love Chat GPT.
Yeah. Also, Magic School AI. That's a great one too. So write that down.
Thank you.
Not a problem. I did at the presentation at the conference. I did one on AI. They loved it. So Magic School AI is specifically for educators. So even if you don't know how to use prompts, it helps. So all of these things can be. What are some great strategies to help me support my support vocabulary? Poof, it'll give you a whole bunch of stuff. So somebody said, thank you so much for this amazing presentation. It's so refreshing. Thank you so much. So Greg put in the chat to share your feedback with Florida Literacy Coalition. So if you could do that. Also, I have a feedback. I always ask anytime I do a presentation, I always ask for folks to give me feedback so that I will know if I need to do something better. So if you don't mind and if you have the time, please grab that as well. I'm going to put that in the chat for you as well. But do theirs first. Mine can wait. Do theirs first. Also, one of the things that I want to show you is in the material that I gave you what's called a pantry, right? Pantry has a bunch of food. This has a bunch of food for the mind. So here's the pantry for vocabulary strategies, context clues, Google folder, word parts, 10 activities to do with word walls. This is a lot. This is a lot. Pick one thing and peruse, So don't try to do all of it. Here's something before reading strategies, during reading, after reading, and then resources, specifically those retrieval practice and spacing guides. I provided that for you. And with that being said, I hope this was beneficial and helpful. And I finished with 4 minutes to spare.
Ed, well, it was an excellent session. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it, Talia. And we'll share our results with you as well. If you can put this in the survey, if you can take a few minutes to fill out those surveys, we'd really appreciate it. Your feedback is much appreciated. And we also I put into the chat another webinar that we have coming up on June 5th, Strategies for Teaching Low Beginning English Learners. Hope you can join us for that as well. So thank you all for joining us, and thank you, Talia. Excellent session. You all have a great afternoon. Bye now.